Welcome to the Dad Task Force. My name is Brad Young. I'm with my partner Daivon, and we got to talking because we're neighbors, and we were talking about how one of the biggest issues that we see in society today, because of the different roles that we have in our real lives, that we see a bunch of men that are ill-equipped. And I'm not saying that to be reductive or to hurt your feelings, but if it does make you feel a certain way, then maybe pay attention a little bit. The idea that what we're doing here with the Dad Task Force is we're bringing guys in that are equipped with different aspects and skills in life to make them to improve one another. It's the old iron sharpens iron adage. And if you want, we'll get into our backgrounds, but the number one predictive indicator of violence, of crime, of substance abuse, of self harm and suicide is fatherlessness. Now, fatherlessness is not having a father. That can look one of two ways. For one, somebody just isn't present. They don't have a father. Or the alternative is that they live under the same roof with a man that pays the bills, but they're not present because they're too busy doing other things. So what we want to do is dial in your focus, and we're going to try to do at least one of these once a week, so that way we just continue pouring into not only this program but to you, and we'll have other people come on. We've got some friends from other states that are going to call in and be a part of it. The big kickback though is that we want you to be better. Now, I'm working with Daivon on a program, and vice versa, that is very unique to his skill set and one unique to my skill set. And actually, let's start there. So, when we started talking about this, like, you almost immediately were like, "I'm on board. This is something I want to do." So, yeah. What is it that what are you bringing to the table?
I think let me start by saying, like, I don't have it all figured out. At no point during this podcast, these discussions, am I going to be like, oh, I'm, holier than thou, anything like that. But I do think that I've had a lot of experiences, both with having great father figures and coaches in my life. And that's something that I've tried to exemplify moving forward with my kids, other kids that I have the privilege of coaching. I've coached for, I don't want to say how old I am, but more than 10 years of coaching.
Let's because guys like sports,
yeah,
and they respect coaches. So I'm going to cut you off and say, no, that's really important. Where were you coaching? What were you coaching? Like, what is your coaching background? Because if I'm understanding your trajectory in this, is how to be a really strong mentor and help mentoring not only your own kids, but other people's kids.
Exactly.
Because how many kids are in the neighborhood that don't have a dad? Maybe not our neighborhood, but in general,
yeah,
that you have circles of influence over that you want to help make better.
Yeah. My background in coaching goes back 6+ years of high school football coaching at all different levels. So the school I coached at, you didn't just get to coach varsity, you had to coach varsity, you had to coach JV.
Coaching at high school.
Yeah, so coached 6+ years of high school football. The school I coached at, you didn't have the privilege of just coaching varsity or just coaching JV, just coaching freshmen. You had to coach all levels. And so I did that for a few years. And then once my kids got older, I wanted to pour that into them. And so I started coaching my daughter's softball teams. And so I've got 2 girls, 9 now, and 5. And I coach both of their teams now. So,
but just, he may not say this because he's far more humble than I am, but he coaches winning teams. That's a huge aspect of this. He coaches winning teams, which the reason I say that is because teams that win are teams, especially at this age, are full of kids that want to be there. They want to learn. They want to engage. And at this point in their lives, they don't have a love of the game. They have their parents' admiration for the game, but to really love the game and show up, especially when it's 100+ degrees outside, is more to do with the team itself than the actual sport. Because I think you could take that sport, the baseball, the softball, the basketball, the soccer, whatever it is, and put them in different things and teach them different sports, and they're still going to show up.
Yeah, it's about creating the environment that they want to be in, because it's no fun for even the kids that want to be there. If there's a kid who's just like bringing everything down, they don't want to be there. Like you said, like it's their parents' aspirations and not just theirs. It's a lot more fun and more productive for everybody if every single kid on that field or on that court or anything like that really wants to be there and is going to be tuned in 100% of the time.
So how do you pull that kid up? How do you get that kid that's he or she is just being like destructive, they're being hard on, like they're being rude to the other players, they're just making an unfun environment? What do you do to change that kid's attitude towards more team minded?
Yeah. No matter what, how like disruptive a kid may be or how rude a kid may be, or they may seem like talentless, every kid has something to bring to the table. And it's about getting that kid to realize how their gift or their strength plays into the bigger picture. Okay. Right. Every team has a class clown. It's inevitable. My daughter's been the class clown on plenty of teams she's been on. It's about not letting that class clown behavior, for example, be disruptive and derailing to your whole practice or to your game or anything like that. I'm just going to keep rolling with the class clown. There's going to be hard games. There's going to be games that like your team gets punched in the face right away. And you almost need those class clowns in that situation, because they're going to keep the spirits high.
Yeah.
Like those kids, especially young kids. Most of my experience recently is with like young girls. They're able, like they immediately, you just see it on their face. They're like, man, like this isn't going as expected.
Yeah.
And then you almost always like your class clown is going to be the one who's not long face, and they're going to figure out a way to like make a joke or something like that. And then all it takes is that one kid to respond to that the right way. And then it brings the whole team up.
Yeah. That's where you get your rallies from.
Yeah.
So that's hugely important. So I also coach, not a lot. I coach a rec league for the city. I don't want to travel. But we have a very successful team. Mm-hmm. And we've got a couple players. We've had players that they're not class clowns. They're just disruptive. They're always like, they're talented naturally, and they like to flex that talent in the faces of those that aren't. And now I can tell you what I do to fix that problem. And it's not an effective mechanism, because I've had the same kids on my team every year for the most part. And every year at the start of the year, we start the same way, where everybody is trying to figure each other out and learn the game and learn each other. But there's those one or two kids that just want to sit there and dig and dig and dig, and it makes it no fun for anybody. Yeah. So I know my method is effective in the season, but it's not effective in pouring into them forever, to make them better humans. Because ultimately that's what a coach and a mentor does, is you are playing a sport, you are doing a thing, but it's learning how to cooperate in society to make it better. So what I do, if I hear it, there's a consequence. And the consequence is usually some sort of physical action, like running bases, running the foul poles, push-ups, depending on the heat index of the day and how egregious it was, or how many times I've told them not to do it. And it works for the season, like I said, but it's not a long-term solution, because some kids are motivated by the carrot, some are motivated by the stick.
Yeah.
Right. And I hate trying to motivate people with the stick at the beginning of the year. However, trying to come in and establish authority and some sort of dominance at the beginning is it's difficult, but it's also, I think, kind of important. So how are you handling that kid?
Yeah. So, for example, like we had a kid on the team who, same thing, like naturally super gifted, could hit really well. And we're doing like fungos and BP, and one of the girls was having a real hard time. And the kid who comes naturally to is like strike one, strike two, strike three. And in my opinion, like you've got to nip that in the bud right away.
Sure.
Like I immediately was like, hey, I seen you strike out. I seen you strike out against one of the worst pitchers I've ever seen. And then the important part is don't just leave it there, right? Like then you're like, but hey, everybody's going to strike out. The best batters in the world, Shohei Ohtani, that's what, 300, right?
Well, what's the average Major League Baseball players? Like, what is it considered a great batting average?
Great batting. If you're in 300, you're Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
Which means 3 out of 10 times you hit the ball.
Yeah.
Right. Like
exactly.
So there's room for improvement for everybody because there are no absolutes.
Yeah.
Just for those that are watching, if you're watching at all, we do this out of my house, out of the Tactical Talker studio. And because it's record-breaking heat today in Idaho, we're trying to do this inside, which means we're also dealing with dogs and people, which is fine because as dads, we want to be connected with our families and pour into them. So that was that now you said you've got 2 kids. I know you've got more kids, and I'm not sure didn't really predisclose how much family stuff we're going to add into this, but talk to me about your family.
Yeah, I've got a wonderful wife. We've been married for 11, almost 12 years, and then 4 kids. So I've got my 9-year-old, my 5-year-old, and then I got 2 boys. One is 2, and the other one he's just about 6 months old. So yeah, we have a full crazy house. We got 2 dogs as well.
You don't just have little dogs either. Like
I got big. I got a pit bull and
giant dogs
and a Cane Corso. It's never quiet in our house.
No.
So,
however, I will say this: every kid in the neighborhood loves to hang out at your house.
We have all the stuff.
You have all the stuff.
We have all the. It's because it's never quiet at our house.
Yeah,
they feel like they don't have to like motor themselves down to be over there.
For sure. So. And actually, it's just to brag about him for a minute. That's actually why I brought him into this when I started thinking about this program. So I am sitting here and I'm watching my kid. So I've got 3, 2 girls and a boy, and my oldest helps out at your house from time to time. My youngest is probably at your house as much as your kids are because they're buddies. He's buddies with your daughter. Mm-hmm. And it's always like, hey, I'm going to be at Daivon's house. I'm going to go to Daivon's house. I'm going to go. And like, what is it about Daivon's house that is so magical? Now, I've been to Daivon's house. I think it's great. There's always something to eat and always something to do. But when I was thinking about this task force idea, these different disciplines, these different things that dads bring to the table to empower and improve their families and their kids and those kids in their spheres of influence, I asked them, like, how do we put this lightning in a bottle? How do we replicate what you're doing so that other dads can do the same thing and be just as successful and really make these impacts? You can go and look at all of these goofy quotes all over the internet, and dads historically have been the disciplinarian. They come, don't argue. Your dad gets home, and that was the role. But as time progresses, we're starting to see a decay in society, and that is in a direct correlation with the decay of being a father. And whatever it is you're doing very well. And I don't even know if you know what exactly it is, like how to articulate it. But I do know that it sticks and it matters because families that have come and gone, they're always at your house, and then they still come back over to the neighborhood to hang out at your house. So do you have any idea what it is? And I don't want you to give the magic sauce away, but just something for the guy that's like, gosh, my wife saw this on Instagram. She's making me watch this. What is he doing that's so special that I'm not? Just something.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to articulate it very well, like you said, but there's this interesting balance that kids need or want. Like kids want to be able to have their own space, and they want to be able to feel like they're not just going to be like scrutinized for everything they do, But at the same time, these kids like require a safety blanket. Like they need to know like if something goes down the wrong path, like I'm gonna be okay. And so that's part of it. Like I try to give them their own space, but I'm always listening, whether they know it or not. My wife is also great. Like she's really on top of like making sure if the kids are all outside, like the windows are open. And so that's one thing, like making them feel like they've got all this freedom. But if anything is going differently than it should be going, like you can jump in right away. But then on that same note, like historically, dads have been like the disciplinarian. Like you don't behave, like your dad's gonna come home, he's gonna be on you, right? Like, and sometimes like you do need to bring like the fire and brimstone, and you need to be like, hey, you messed up bad. But at the other end of it, like you need to be like understanding. So like it's not just fire and brimstone all the time, because then it's just noise. Like they're just like, I freaking dropped a plate. My dad's gonna lose his stuff today. And then the other part of it is like, dude, your son's awesome. My daughter is like or my oldest daughter, all my kids really, but my oldest daughter's a great, like, she's gonna follow the rules. She's a rule follower.
It's a firstborn thing. We'll get into that in future episodes. That's a firstborn thing.
But having like that little core of kids that you can really trust is huge. Like everybody's kid doesn't have like that home environment that is like going to be able to nurture and grow a kid the right way. And my daughter's really good, actually. I don't want to paint her out as like a snitch, but she will tell me like, hey, like this happened today and I don't think it was right. And so then one-on-one, you can talk to your kid, or you can talk to like other kids in the neighborhood and just like talk through what happened and what should have happened, and build on it from there.
That's this number one, this episode is all about you. So I'm focusing on you and what you're doing, but I'm going to little peek behind the curtain. I was a cop for 13 years, and I can tell you, everybody snitches. Everybody snitches. And it's just part of the game. Everybody snitches. So how do other parents feel about you, not tuning their kid up, but like correcting behavior?
One thing, and this is both here in the neighborhood and with my coaching, like I will let parents know, like, hey, if your kid is misbehaving at your house, like they're misbehaving at my house as far as I'm concerned. Like if your kid is misbehaving at home and not listening, they can't come to my house. Or like if your kid is not listening at home, I'm going to sit them on the bench. Like they can come to the game, but they're not playing. And so then I do feel like it opens up this two-way street of like, hey, I'm not going to like discipline your kid, but I'm going to like guide your kid and make sure that they're not just doing whatever they want when they're at my house or under my supervision.
You're an accountability marker.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a kid that we both know. And there's a 4th of July party in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so his extended family is here. And they're like, oh, this is Brad. And like, oh, you're the one that keeps this kid in line. And then like sometimes, because he comes to the house and he acts a fool from time to time. And it's like, go mow the grass. Yeah. Not my grass. I make my kid mow my grass. But because he's on my baseball team, I also say, if you want to play, your grass needs to be mowed because you need to take care of your house.
Yeah.
You cannot complain about anybody else if you're not watering your own yard. So
exactly.
Have you had any parents push back on your philosophy or style? They're like, my kid is the best.
Oh yeah, those rose-colored glasses. Yeah. Not necessarily push back. I've had some parents like communicate to me that maybe it's not the best way to communicate with their kid. And I'll listen. Like, absolutely, I'm not always correct. Sure. But I will also push back and be like, hey, I think that sometimes part of the reason your kid is acting out is because you're allowing it. Like you're not stern enough with your kid. And so their kids by nature just push boundaries. They want to see like how far they can take everything. Just like a puppy. Like we got dogs running around here. Like puppies are going to find out where the boundary is. Mm-hmm. And if they know in certain situations at home, like they can get away with whatever, they're going to try. But there's a reason that like, not to toot my own horn, there's a reason that my teams win. And it's because like those kids know that's not going to fly. When kids come to my house, like for a while, there were kids in the neighborhood that would not come to my house because they knew that stuff wasn't going to fly.
Rules and regulations.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So we forget kids want structure, and they don't want heavy-handed structure. They want guidance and a box, and say this is the rules, and they're going to try to test that because that's what kids do, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you as a parent, as a father, if you're like, look, this is my expectation, then there's no guessing game.
Right.
There's not like this pretend, well, last time you said it was okay if I did this, but this time you got mad at me. And now you've got a kid that's walking on eggshells because they don't know if it's going to be okay, if it's not going to be okay. So establishing clear, defined, and articulate boundaries allows your kid to have freedom within those boundaries.
100%.
So, and I think the same is true in sports, right?
Yep.
So, because you coach other people's kids and you mentor other people's kids, do you talk to the parents first about like, these are my expectations and these are the boundaries that I'm giving your children?
Yes. So very first practice, have a meeting with the parents right afterwards, and we have a parent code of conduct that goes to them, and then we have a kids code of conduct, and it's like, hey, these are the expectations when you're here, because when we're on the field, like, we're in charge. So one of the rules is like, you can't coach your kid when they're at practice, because they need to understand that the coaching and all of the things that have to do with softball are between the coaches. Like, it's what the coach tells them. And then some of that I mentioned earlier, but like, I tell them, like, if your kid's not behaving at home, they're, as far as I'm concerned, they're not behaving here. And then I also map out that, you know, what we run. If anybody messes up, we run, and we're going to run, and we're going to run, and we're going to run until we cannot get it wrong. And on that same note, like, I set expectations. Like, your kid needs to come in this attire to practice. If they come here, they're coming to work. Yeah. When they touch green grass, green on a stoplight means go. Like, there's no walking on our fields.
Yeah.
And so that way, like, that's pretty important, because you don't want them to practices and to be like, dude, what is going on? This guy is nuts. At least they know like what's going to be going on and why you're running their kid.
Yeah, you're on. Like, I think that I love watching parents' face when you tell them that too. It's like, what? So I coach for the city, and it is better now than it was when we started. But the first year, we had no parent volunteers that wanted to step up and coach. So half of the teams had coaches that have never played baseball. And the parents are upset that their kid's not winning.
Right.
And it's like, that's not my fault. I can't control what the other coach does. But here's the thing. You also can't be mad if you're not willing to put in the work. So we would have parents, that was a strike. That was a ball. I'm like, it's a machine. Right. Like, they get a set amount of pitches. Like, there's only like, I'll give you, but look, you want to umpire, come on out and umpire.
Right.
But if you're going to sit in a lawn chair behind home plate and scream and yell at your kid and scream and yell at the other kids, then I would rather you just not even be there, because what you're doing is you're putting so much unnecessary pressure on a game that's not going to turn kids into Major League Baseball players. Half of them are still trying to figure out if they can catch that butterfly in the outfield at this age. So let's not think everybody is, Ivan Rodriguez, because nobody's Pudge.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, because it's like, it's a parallel to life, right?
Oh,
like,
for sure.
You go you go to like Major League Baseball games, right? You don't hear like the coaches yelling at the batter when he's in the batter box, like, keep your eyes on the ball, hands back. Like, they're not doing that, because they've prepared that player up until that point to do what they need to do in like when the time is right.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be up there with your kid when they're taking their math test at school, right? Like, you know, like in no other place would you be doing that.
Unless, but if you've seen the recent information that came out, the parents are taking their kids to their job interviews and sitting in the job interview with them like they were
right.
John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell and Step Brothers. Like, it's like,
right. Like,
no, I'm not hiring you, mom. I'm not hiring you, dad. I'm hiring your baby.
Right.
And they need to be productive members of society. And because of this, they're not going to be a good employee.
Right.
Because what happens when they fail?
Exactly.
They fail and they get in trouble. Now mom and dad are like, my baby. No.
Right.
My company, my brand, my bottom line.
I got to put food in my kid's mouth. I can't coddle your kid.
Yeah, that's great. So we're gonna try to keep these at about half an hour. And any pearls of wisdom you want to throw out from episode 1?
Yeah, I think actually just one thing you mentioned, and it kind of maybe slid under the radar a little bit, but it doesn't just end like, you know, we're going to go back to coaching, but it doesn't just end when your kid comes home from practice. Like, you've got to still lay into your kid. Like, you got to pour into your kid. And like, play catch with your kid. Like, continue those same lessons that they're getting at practice or at school or anything like that at home. And then you'd be surprised how much kids will just start talking to you. Like, you'll find out so much about your kid just playing catch because like they're comfortable and their guard is down. And if you're not used to that as a parent, like, you know, it's gonna open up a lot of doors for you, and it's gonna bring you a lot closer to your kid.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's really important to look at, because we used to show a video in a parenting class, and more of that in a future episode. But one of the hallmarks of it is these parents, they're all interviewed on camera, and they're sitting there like, and the question is, if your kids could have dinner with anybody in the world, who would it be? And they're like, this celebrity, that celebrity, this actor, whatever, you know. And then they go and they film the kids, and they said, all right, same question, kids. If you could have dinner with anybody in the world, who would it be? And the moms and dad are watching this on a monitor in another room, and they're watching the kids come in, and every one of these kids said the same thing. Sit down and have like a dinner with somebody and get to talk to them. Yeah. Mom and dad. Mom and dad. Huge impacts on success if you have both parents present. Now, I understand that that's not necessarily the case for everybody, and it's not always an option. So that is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that being present matters.